We have officially crossed the mystical midpoint of the season, and the Orlando Magic are not where they want to be. How do they get where they want to go? Today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is January 19th. It will be January 20th, 2026. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com, credentialed member of the Orlando Magic media since the 2012 season. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, we're going to take a break. We're going to take a step back and begin our conversation, our biannual conversation with Jason Beede of the Orlando Sentinel. We're going to break down on today's episode how the Orlando Magic got to where they are, what's kind of gone wrong, maybe what's gone right this season. And tomorrow, we'll continue our conversation and talk about how the Magic get to where they want to be. We're going to get to that over the next 2 days coming up here in just a moment. First, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. No matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload, we truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. You can make Locked On Magic even bigger part of your day by being one of our Orlando Magic dailies, our everydayers. That means we're part of your regular podcast rotation. That means you're listening to us first thing, your first listen of the day, whether it's first in the morning, whether it's right when we upload. It means you're part of our everydayer club. We want to thank you all for helping make the Locked On Magic community such a great community. And thank you for helping make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. A few things before we get started, because I do want to get into this conversation. We talked with Jason. Jason and I are really the two main daily beat guys on the Orlando Magic. So if something's going on with the Magic, it's usually one of us that is knowing or thinking or talking about it. But I want to take this quick beat before we get into everything else. I want to start with this. The basic facts. The Orlando Magic are 23-19 this season. It is the same record they had at this point last season. It is, I believe, the same record they had in 2024 when they won 47 games. Orlando has a 114.4 offensive rating, which would put them at 16th in the league, a huge bump up from last year. They have a 113.6 defensive rating, which puts them 12th in the league, a huge downgrade from last year. Their 0.8 net rating is right smack dab in the middle. And so the Magic are essentially playing like a 500 team. And they've been a 500 team really since December 7th or so, when they've essentially exchanged wins and losses. I believe they're 9-9 over the last 18 games. Like, they're treading water. And that's obviously not where we thought or we would hope that this Magic team would be. We believe that this was a team that was preparing to compete for a championship, that was preparing to take this leap. And so the posture of where the Magic are and the posture of where we are all sitting is one of frustration. It is one of disappointment. It is one of, frankly, saying the Magic are not where they're supposed to be. Now, having said that, there's always two sides to this coin. The Orlando Magic are right in the thick of things. They're playing poorly. They're not playing the way we expected them to play. They're not the team we thought they would be. But they aren't out of anything yet. As I'm recording this after the Cleveland Cavaliers lost to the Oklahoma City Thunder this afternoon, on Monday afternoon, the Magic are 6th in the Eastern Conference in a statistical virtual tie with the Philadelphia 76ers for 5th. And the Cleveland Cavaliers for 7th. They are a game ahead of the Miami Heat in 8th at 22-20. 3 games clear of the Chicago Bulls for 9th. They are 2 games back of the New York Knicks at 25-17 for 3rd. And as I'm recording this, the Knicks are trailing the Dallas Mavericks by 9 points in the second quarter. Knicks are 2-8 in their last 10, have lost their last 3. And they are 3.5 games back of the Boston Celtics in 2nd. All not impossible to catch up. And so I say all that, and on top of that, their 19 losses are 5th in the Eastern Conference. They have the same number of losses as the Toronto Raptors with 2 games in hand. So the Magic have 2 more opportunities to get wins than Toronto does at this point with the same number of losses. The Sixers have 18 losses, so again, games in hand and all that stuff. But the Magic are right in the thick of things. and still very much control their own destiny. I'm not here to extol the standings and talk about the standings very much because it's still too early. Take care of your own business. Your business will take care of you. But I want to set the table and share where the Magic are at before we dive into this conversation. And so with that, let's bring in Jason Beede of the Orlando Sentinel and talk about how the Magic got here and what comes next. And we are now joined by our good friend for our biannual. I forget which one is correct. We're reporters. We write for a living. Sometimes we don't understand these things either, but we're joined once again, as we usually are for these big kind of season recappy, like look ahead moments, by our friend Jason Beede of the Orlando Sentinel. Jason, I know you stayed in Orlando, but how was living on European time for the last week?
I mean, I enjoyed it. It was a little weird thinking, especially because they were different time zones, not just Europe. Like it wasn't just like this was a set time. It was 6 hours and then I guess 5 hours in London. But it was interesting. I mean, it was kind of nice knowing, you wake up and you kind of have all the media availabilities or the injury report info or whatever it might be, at your, right then and available pretty early in the day. And by the time you were done working, you knew there wasn't going to be, any last minute breaking news because they were 5-6 hours ahead. Sometimes, we might be done with practice or work or whatever it might be. We still have to wait for that 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock injury report. And, by the time I got to 4 o'clock here, it was, almost 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock over there. So, like when I reported that, Franz wasn't even on the injury report, it was on the 8 a.m. local Eastern injury report.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like,
got a whole day out of that.
That was so weird. That was just so weird to see that. So I enjoyed it. It was different than being 3 hours ahead of the team, like when they are on the West Coast or whatever it might be. So, I think as we were texting, the more afternoon basketball, the better. So
yes, I don't know how fans feel about afternoon basketball. I don't know how the players feel about afternoon basketball. Reporters love afternoon basketball. Great to have our evenings back and to like get stuff done at like 7 o'clock instead of 11:30. But Jason, while the team was in Europe, they crossed the magical, mystical line that is the midpoint of the season. We are 42 games into our 82-game season now. We got a little bit of a chance to take a breath here as the team gets back to Orlando. They flew back Monday. They'll take Tuesday off before they prep for Thursday's game against the Charlotte Hornets. And so it is a good time to take a step back and kind of figure out what's going on with this season. And, as I'm trying to think about this season, I'm struggling to put my finger on it. Obviously I'm here every day. I have to talk about it every day. You have to talk about it every day. But what have been your impressions of the season so far? And how would you describe how the Magic are playing this year?
Yeah, I think the best word that I can come up with is head scratching. I think it's been head scratching at times. I mean, the 1-4 start kind of caught me off guard, quite frankly. I mean, I think we talked about it I was on multiple podcasts before the season. We were all kind of looking at that start that was, pretty home heavy. I think it was like three home games in a row, and you weren't looking at too many losses, and then they start 1-4, and here we are on the road, asking combative questions and whatnot. So that was weird. And I figured they, just like basketball is a game of runs, the season is a game of runs sometimes. And they did kind of figure it out. And it's kind of almost felt like in a weird way, deja vu, similar to last season. I know the injuries haven't been as serious. I mean, Paolo's obviously returned to form. We've seen that already. Franz won't take much longer, I'm sure. Jalen Suggs, a little deja vu. It's kind of like, he had another one injury, now another one. And it's, I'm not really sure exactly where he sits in his latest rehab. I think multiple days of rest and practice will help him as he tries to get back to the court. Maybe against Charlotte, maybe against Cleveland. We'll see what happens with the timing of that. But it's been head scratching. I think it kind of fits the team in the sense that I think you said this the other day when we were texting during the game. Like, I don't know if they felt like this was going to be all easier than it was, but that's kind of where I'm at. And I think, the same way we haven't seen Desmond Bane get the number of threes up as we thought he might have, or the same way that, the bench with Tyus Jones hasn't worked out the way we thought it would. I mean, look, the reality of the situation is nothing's ever going to turn out exactly how you think. I still think though it's just been a little head scratching, and that doesn't mean it's been a failure. I don't think we can call anything a failure halfway through. Hasn't been disappointing. I think every fan would say whatever every fan watching would say that. I think you and I would be in agreement with those fans, and but that doesn't mean that the season's over, right? I mean, we're halfway through. I mean, I think I wrote today that, I know there were games going on Monday afternoon and Monday night, but they were only a handful of games back of the 3 seed and not far back of the 2 or the 4 seed. So it's like, yes, I think it's easy to overreact and whatnot. And, those are the comes with ebbs and flows of a season, but it's just been head scratching for me for the reasons why they've struggled, right? It's not like we've seen the past, the lack of, there are obvious things still limiting this team, but a lot of it's just been like the energy and the effort. And that's like, we'll dive into this on, is that coaching? Is that player leadership? What is that exactly? But I would just say for me, it's just been a head scratching season at every twist and turn.
Let's take a quick break from our conversation to tell you a little bit about our friends over at Quo. New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there has to be a better way, right? And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you could make. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. Quo makes things so simple. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number so nothing gets missed. It works right from your phone or computer, and you can even keep your existing numbers. It's no surprise that Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNBA. That's Quo, QUO.com/LockedOnNBA. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. We want to thank you for making Locked On Magic your first listen of the day. And thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't heard about our Everydayer Club, this is a great opportunity to expand your horizons in the Locked On Magic community. With the Locked On Magic Everydayer Club, you get access to ad-free audio feed of Locked On Magic, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. You also get an invite to our members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of this show. I'm usually hanging out there. I'm hanging out there all the time. So if you ever have any questions, you can drop a question in there. I put a poll up today to name the Magic's first half MVP. I was actually surprised that my answer didn't surprise people. And you can also hang out there during games where I provide my 3 thoughts after every quarter. The Locked On Everydayer Club is your best way to expand your Locked On Magic horizon. So go to lockedonmagic.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. Yeah, I think that is a fair way to describe it, because I know I said this on the pod and I've repeated it because it's popped up every so often, that lack of energy. The 1-4 start, easily dismissed as, okay, just early season, like randomness. Our friend Matt Moore of Locked On Nuggets would always write, like, first 2 weeks of the season, the last 2 weeks of the season, everything's just kind of random. You don't know what to expect because A, players are new, and then B, like, sometimes guys get hot or you're looking ahead to the playoffs, you don't know what's going to happen. And there are little pockets of that throughout the season. Christmas is an easy time where guys get distracted. The trade deadline, the All-Star break, guys get distracted a little bit. So you can't take anything, you can't take everything as gospel. But I remember saying during the 1-4 start, like, yeah, this is probably going to pass. All the panic, like, I would always tell people, like, give everyone till Thanksgiving. And if they get home from that Thanksgiving road trip where they beat the Sixers, beat the Pistons, probably 2 of the best wins of the season. If they get home from that and they're still, like, kind of in this morass or kind of in this like really bad spot, then we'll start sounding some alarm bells. But we got to give them some time. And obviously by then they fixed some things. But at the end of the day, too, what caused them to go 1-4 is part of who they are as well. And I think the biggest thing that shocked all of us in that stretch was just how inconsistent the defense was. And that has been, and I think it's all part of the same thing where the Magic set the bar high. Like, it isn't just the media saying like, oh, you're going to be the 3 seed. Everyone on the team talked about their goal of home court advantage, of winning a winning a championship. I've never heard this team talk so openly about winning a championship since Dwight Howard was here. When they literally could win a championship like that Dwight Howard was a championship level player when he was here. I haven't heard this team talk so openly about it. And so to see this team fail to meet its standard, especially on the defensive end, where I think it's fair to assume we expected this team to be a top 5 defensive team. Like, maybe take a small step back because you're adding some new offensive players, some weaker defensive players to boost the offense a little bit. But for this team to be sitting at, I think, 11th in the league in defensive rating, to have, my stat that I hate the most right now is the Magic through 42 games have given up 120 points per 100 possessions 13 times already this season. They gave up a total of 8 times last season. It's different. Yeah. And like, that to me is as head scratching as anything. And so I think before you go anywhere, we got to ask this question: what is this team's identity? Like, what is the thing they count on every night right now? Or do they not have that? And is that the problem?
I don't know if they have one right now. They like to say they have one. They like to say this is Magic basketball, the way we defended. You go back to that third quarter in Berlin. Maybe that third quarter is Magic basketball, but we haven't seen that consistently. Like, maybe they do have an identity, and they like to say they have an identity, but we haven't seen it over the stretch of for some time now. Like, I don't know how many games it's been, but it's been over a month. And I think, some of that coincides with Jalen Suggs being out and Franz just coming back and whatnot, but you still have Paolo Banchero, you still have Desmond Bane, you still have Wendell Carter. I know, we've seen this incredible leap from Anthony Black. We've seen Jace Richardson get time. We've seen Noah Penda step in. Jonathan Isaac has taken a step back in that regard defensively when he's been on the court. But I just think there's not much, like, there's an identity they think they want to have, but there's not a consistent identity. I mean, you mentioned the 120 points. I tweeted yesterday they're 3-7 in games when giving up 126 or more. Not even 120, 126. And they didn't give up 126 once last year. Now, they gave up 125 a few times, but I just think the fact that you have a Magic team that's coached by Jamal Mosley that's given up 126 or more points in 10 games through the first 42, that's pretty surprising to see and not something we expected. Like, if you had asked me what would be the issues with this team, it would have been, maybe the fit with Bane doesn't go as well, and Tyus Jones doesn't play as well as you'd expect him to be, and Franz hasn't bounced back at the 3-point range, or Paolo's, his inefficiency, really takes a jump this year, or whatever it is. You would not. There would have been a list of things before the lack of defensive effort, right? Like, you wouldn't have said the defense is going to be the problem. And that's why last year's team was so good, even though they went 41-41 and were a first-round exit. They could rely and lean back on their defense. I mean, they were so good at not giving up. I think they had, I don't remember the exact record, but how many times did they not give up 100 points? I don't think this team has given up less than 100 points or fewer than 100 points.
I think just maybe
once,
games,
maybe twice. It hasn't been like
itself. Yeah.
Like last year, I think it was, numerous times. It was multiple times. They were like 10-0 or something like that, or maybe like 11-1 or some. It was an impressive mark for an NBA team in the modern era where 3-point shooting is up, scoring is up, all these things. It's like, if you turn on a Magic game last year, you're watching 90s basketball. And when you turn on a Magic game now, it's not much different than any other game in the league right now, because, the thing that we've consistently seen is they just try to match baskets. And because their shooting isn't as good as we would have thought it might have been, they're exchanging 2 for 3s, and even sometimes not getting to the free throw line, which is the problem that happened in London. They weren't getting to the free throw line at all. I think you mentioned they either ended up at tied season low free throw attempts.
Tied their season low with 16.
So, like, if you're not going to get to free throw line, that's an issue when you're not going to be shooting the three ball as well as you would have thought. So it's just the fact that, I don't know if it's like a mental thing or a coaching thing, but whatever the case may be, maybe they feel like, now that we're putting up all these points, we don't have to defend as well. And that's an effort thing. But at the same time, it's also a personnel thing. I mean, I think it's almost underrated, let alone Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. I mean, Gary Harris, you talk about that point of attack. How many times did we see last year? I think back to that game in Cleveland, when they snapped Cleveland's streak, it was like Gary would tell AB to switch to switch on their defensive, and they their defensive effort, and they'd get a couple stops and completely flip the game. I mean, their point of attack defense, especially when Jalen is out, is almost non-existent, because that's just not who, even though Franz is a great defender and one of the better two-way players in the league, he's not a point of attack defender like that. He can guard multiple positions, but that's not Paolo, and that's certainly not, guys further down the depth front like Tyus Jones. Like, defenses or offenses are attacking him on defense, obviously, because of his size. But I just think from an identity standpoint, they like to keep saying they have one, but we haven't seen it consistently. And there's been glimpses of it. We've seen, like I mentioned, the third quarter earlier in London that flipped the game in their favor. But besides that, it hasn't been a consistent identity.
Let's take a quick break to tell you once again about our friends over at TurboTax, because tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out reforms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employment forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. Yeah, I think that's more than fair to say. Like, again, we say, I think this team's been very good about saying what they need to change. Like, I think they know it's just about playing better. Like, it isn't like we'll get to the Jamal Mosley stuff in a minute. That is something fans are talking a ton about, and it is something worth discussing. But we know this defensive system works, and maybe there are tweaks that need to be made to help accommodate some of the new personnel that haven't been made, but they know this works. It's about execution, and the execution and effort hasn't been at the same level that it kind of defined this team. Like, that, to me, that's the biggest thing is for 4 years, the reputation for the Orlando Magic has been they're going to work harder than you. Like, you will not outwork this team. And now not consistently, I would say it's maybe 1 out of 4 games, maybe 2 out of 5, like 1.5 out of every 4 games. You're just watching it. You're just like, that team is outworking the Magic. Like, the Wizards outworking the Magic, the Grizzlies on Sunday outworking the Magic. They're winning the 50-50 balls. You see shoulders droop, like, to me, that's the biggest change. Is this Magic team was never going to shoot well. Like we were hoping for a league average offense. I think most Magic fans would take a league average offense, which, in fairness, they are league average offense. They're 16th in the league in offensive rating still. We didn't expect this team to suddenly become one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the league. Like, Desmond Bane would help. He has to some extent. He hasn't in others. They're still 28th in the league, I think, in 3-point field goal percentage. That never affected the defense until this year. And maybe some of that is the pace they're trying to play at. Maybe that's some of the tweaks have had unintended consequences with the defense. But it feels like this team has kind of forgotten, or maybe this is the better way to say it, has taken for granted what made them different and made them really good. Having said that, like you mentioned, the Magic are still right in the thick of the race. They're 7th in the East to be entering Monday's games. Cleveland's playing right now as we're recording this. It looks like they're going to lose. They're down 16 with 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter as we're recording this. That's going to, the standings shuffle every day. You're game and a half back of Toronto in 4th, I believe. You're or a game and a half back of Toronto for 5th, I believe. You're not too far behind. You're games.
I'll tell you right now,
okay,
before the Cleveland Cavs are done playing.
Yeah, and the standings reshuffle.
A game back of number 4 Toronto, 2 games back of number 3 New York, and a little bit further behind number 2 Boston. But
yeah,
it's not like it's 4.5, 5.5, 6 games. Like there's a gap between, maybe 1-2 gap, 3 through 7 are right.
It's tight, and it's going to be tight the rest of the way.
It's going to look different in 2 weeks. I mean, that's what we're talking about.
And so like this is one of the larger points I've tried to make to people. The Magic they're within a game of their record. At least I think they have the same record, but they
have the same record right now.
They have the same record that they had last year, the same record that they had in 2024 when they won 47 games. And I think most of us said like, oh, they left wins on the table. They could have easily been 50 wins in the 2 or the 3 seed that year. This is the thing that has astounded me as much as anything else. The Orlando Magic have only had 1 losing streak of longer than 2 games this season, if I'm not mistaken. And that was the 4-game losing streak at the start of the season. Last year, when this team was really bad, as Paolo was working his way back from injury, as Franz was working his way back from injury, when they dealt with all those injuries in December and January, they lost 9 of 11 games. And they had the 1-6 homestand in February that really torpedoed the season. For whatever you want to say about this team, and we've obviously spent 15 minutes already talking a lot about what's going wrong with this team. If this is the Magic being really bad, they're 500. The floor is raised. The floor is higher, and they're treading water, which isn't what they need to do. They need to start picking up wins. Everyone acknowledges that. But their floor is much higher now. And that to me, because I'm an internal optimist, that to me suggests that they'll be able to put some of these pieces together still in the second half of the season. Now, granted, they've squandered some opportunities already, but I want to spend this next segment talking this way. What has gone right for the Magic? Like, why should there be a hint of optimism about the direction this team is going? Or should there be? Am I just being naive?
No, I think I think you kind of said it before they went to Europe. Like, this is going to break off one way or the other. Like, they're not going to go win loss for the rest of the season. That would be absurd. And they did get 2 wins in a row. They did win in Berlin, and then they lost in London. So that kind of snapped some the real opportunity for major momentum, not just 2 wins in a row, but God forbid 3. But I think what's gone right for this team is the fact that they haven't quit, right? We'll see what Franz is going to continue to find his legs and his timing. I thought some of his layups were off, and that contributed to some of the problems they had in the paint scoring in London. But Paolo Banchero is playing at a really good level right now. I mean, he's back, right? There's no more waiting. Right? Like he is Paolo Banchero right now. We're going to have to monitor Jalen's situation. I think in lieu of Jalen, the major thing that's gone right is Anthony Black. And I think that dunk that he had over 4 Grizzlies, it's amazing how one play changes the PR, I guess, if you want to call it, of a player. I mean, you turned on Amazon Prime pregame. I texted you before the game in London. I said, what would they be talking about if Anthony Black didn't, put the internet on fire with his dunk? I mean, I think NBA PR tweeted it had like 85 million individuals.
It's the most viewed highlight of the season.
I mean, you and I knew what Anthony Black had been doing, but when you get a play like that sparks it nationally and internationally, you have Candace Parker calling him the most improved player. We had seen that for over a month, for 2 months, for the majority of the season. I mean, he had a little bit of a drop off after those. I think he had like 5 or 6 games with like 20 plus points. Then there was a slight drop off, but he's leveled off. I mean, he is getting to the point where you're wondering, like, when Jalen comes back. I'm not saying they're going to do this. I'm just saying, like, Anthony Black has made it's going to be interesting to see how they handle that, I guess.
It's not crazy to think that the Magic could slow play Jalen Suggs coming back. Like,
right.
The fact
and
is,
that
like,
might be beneficial because we've
yeah.
seen time and time again where Jalen has come back from missing time and he re-injures. This is literally what just happened. He re-injured himself.
In fairness, he got landed on. It wasn't like,
that's
the
right.
injury re-aggravated. It was he went for a layup and a 6'10" guy landed on him. It's sometimes it's just like, well, what do you want to do? What do you want us to do?
Right.
Like, what do you want him to do?
Some of that driving? Is right. But we've seen in the past where it's gone.
Yeah. He's been snake bitten by injuries, and the Magic's most successful season was his healthiest.
The fact that we can even consider Anthony Black staying in the starting lineup until Jalen's like, not just back on the court, but his minutes are lifted and things like that. Because look, we can tell you right now, whenever Jalen comes back, he's not going to play in back-to-backs. His minutes are going to be restricted. This is how, no one should be surprised when that happens because this is how the Magic handle the players. Whether you like that or not, it's a different conversation.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me if Anthony Black's emergence is going to give the Magic permission to bring Suggs off the bench to control those minutes a little bit better. And that doesn't mean Jalen won't eventually regain his spot in the starting lineup. It doesn't mean that Black is a permanent starter or anything, but it just means like, okay, we're struggling a little bit. We need our defense back. Let's Suggs is at 80%. Let's limit his minutes, bring him off the bench. We can control things a little bit better that way. Let's have him play. And then when we feel like he's 110%, we'll be all steam ahead. Or if we're struggling with this, we'll go all steam ahead and put him back in the starting lineup. This is a good problem to have. Like that you have a guy like
the fact that we're even having this conversation, the fact that we're having this conversation and it's not like some absurd hot take just says how much right has gone for Anthony Black this season. And it comes at one of the most important seasons in a young player's career is this time where he's kind of working towards that extension in question. And I know this is an off-season topic about how much how much do you pay Anthony Black in the future, but he's taking advantage of this opportunity and it's been fun to watch. So that's one thing that's gone right. I mean, the other thing that I talked, a larger point, is that this team hasn't quit, right? Like that would be a difference if, they were talking negatively about themselves or not talking to the media in the locker room or we've seen, a few weeks ago, it was the fourth quarter problems. Now it seems to be the start of games. Like they're trying to find consistent basketball and some of that is, finding consistent rotations and who Jamal can play on any given night and whatnot. And we'll see, as we get closer to All-Star break and then eventually post All-Star break, number one, what this roster looks like, and number two, how he handles those rotation question marks, because I think that has contributed. A lot of it is based on player availability. Like I know we had some people saying, why is Tyus playing? First of all, Tyus only played like 3 or 4 minutes in London. I mean, Jace Richardson played 20 minutes in London. But when you're without Jalen, there's no choice. You have to
play one of them.
Jace isn't going to play 40 minutes. I mean, that's the reality. So it's going to be interesting to see how those things shift and land. But I just think the fact that the team hasn't quit, is the major reason why they've been able to go, win, loss, and remain afloat.
I want to thank Jason Beede of the Orlando Sentinel once again for coming on the show as he does regularly during these big pivot points, these moments where we're kind of assessing where we're at. We're going to be back tomorrow to talk about how the Magic move forward, what comes next for the Orlando Magic. I'm not going to obsess about the standings quite yet, but I shared them with you earlier. We'll talk more about where the Magic go next on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic. So the conversation continues into tomorrow's episode for part 2 of this conversation with Jason Beede of the Orlando Sentinel. Hope it gives you an insight into what we talk about. We are the two kind of daily beat guys for the Orlando Magic. We are pretty much, he and I are the only ones that travel. I tend to travel more later in the season. I've got a trip planned in March. I'm going to Miami next week as well. So Jason will be in Cleveland for the big game on Monday as well. So if I'm not mistaken, so I don't want to speak for him, but we are the two beat guys. We're the two guys that are with the team as much as anyone else. So hopefully this gives you an insight into what we're thinking about, what we're discussing, and what may really matter for the Orlando Magic as we've gotten to this point in the season and tomorrow as we move forward. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at @PhilipR_OMD and on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the fun places you download podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. You can check us out on YouTube as well. Just search for Locked On Magic. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. I named my first half MVP over there. Follow us on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, be sure to subscribe to our everydayer club at lockedonmagic.supercast.com. You get ad-free audio as well as access to our Discord server. And you can also check out my Patreon page as well to get an extra article Orlando Magic every single day, as well as a Discord server access there as well. Thank you all for your support. It truly, truly means so much that you're willing to support me and my journalistic efforts in addition to the Locked On Magic podcast. For those of you on video, we're going to send you the first ever 24/7 national NBA YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you make your second listen NBA game night on Locked On NBA. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. We'll be back for part 2 of the conversation with Jason Beede on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic. But until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.